What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another movie review. Today we are talking about Joker 2, Joker Folie Deux. I think I said that right. From director Todd Phillips, starring Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix back as Arthur Fleck. Now, I think this movie is going to be very divisive, right? I said yesterday, coming off the theater, I was like, yikes. I think people are either going to love or hate this movie, right? And I'm going to get into big spoilers, you know, about the end of the movie towards the end of this episode. But for the people that don't want spoilers, if you were expecting the first movie, don't, right? Like, it was getting, you know, rumored that it was a musical. They should be billing this as a musical. Now, granted, it's not your normal musical. There is quite a dark undertone story going on with Arthur fighting for his life after the last movie, right? He had murdered all those people. This movie, he's on trial for murder, and he's like, you know, whether or not he's going to get the life sentence, you know, the death sentence type of thing. And you know, that's like the premise of this movie. Now, granted, it is a deep exploration on like who someone like the Joker is, and in that sense it's fascinating. In my build up to this movie, I was saying that Lady Gaga would be pivotal whether or not I liked this movie or not, and her character's fine, and I thought she was going to have a much more pivotal role in if I liked it or not. But I think the real problems with Todd Phillips, and you know, I loved the first one, Todd, and I believe the first movie was an Oscar-winning performance for not only Joaquin Phoenix, but that score won me over in that first movie, right? Just how dark and sad that movie was, and just the right, like it was just like this slow, sad, low note on this violin, and it was beautiful, but it was also dark, and like you had this edge of your seat, I don't know what's gonna happen next type of thing. And that happens in this movie, but like right when you're on your edge of your seat, like what's gonna happen next, all of a sudden they dump into some musical sequence, and the musical sequences are beautifully shot. But like if you're not in the mood for a musical, and you're in the mood to explore much more of the first movie of Arthur Fleck, now granted, it has to be a different movie. He's not just going to do the same movie all over again. But I believe this movie would have been a Tony-winning stage performance, right? Like Lady Gaga would be collecting a statue, and Joaquin Phoenix would be collecting Tony Awards if this wasn't a movie. Now granted, it's at 48% Rotten Tomato score right now for critics. Normally I am so far away from the critics score, but I'm kind of with them at this point, because I sat through it yesterday, and you know, it was interesting because I had a decently packed theater. I went to a 3 o'clock first show time we possibly could, so there was a bunch of other people in there that wanted to see this movie the first possible moment they could. And yet the entire theater was crickets, right? There's no laughs, there's no singing along, there's no, you know, joy, there's no sadness, right? Like it was just a bunch of people being quiet for 2.5 hours, you know, 2 hours, what, 18 minutes or whatever. You know, is that an enjoyable experience in the theaters? It can be, I guess, if it's a real thought-provoking piece and you leave like, And, you know, I haven't stopped thinking about this since. Real quick, I just want to talk about these posters. This one here, the Joker and Harley show. And I like how the movie started with an animated piece where it's like, okay, is it Arthur Fleck or is it Joker? Is it split personality type of thing? And I don't know. It was an interesting route, you know, thought piece to be like, okay, what is someone like the Joker, Arthur Fleck, you know, how does he become this way? And, you know, it's interesting in that sense, but then they're, like I said, they're throwing musical bits in there, and there's a lot more than you would think, right? Like, say there's 5, and I think there's a lot more than 5. I think there's more like, you know, 7 to 9 musical little parts of the movie. But, you know, just for numbers' sake, say there was 5. Only, and I'm an old soul, I am young, but I'm an old soul. I listen to old music. I listen to the Dean Martins, the Frank Sinatras. You know, I'm listening to old stuff constantly. And out of all of the songs, I only recognized 2 of them. Now, granted, I am a subtitles at home kind of guy, and throughout the theater, you know, they're singing and shit, and I couldn't quite pick up what they were saying sometimes because Arthur kind of has this low, you know, not necessarily pronunciating singing voice. It's still interesting, but it's also like just, I don't know, I felt the movie could have been like the first movie and it could have been great. And then I felt that it was a musical, and like if you're into a play or a musical, this might scratch that itch. But it's not as good as the first one in my mind. You know, I didn't give it as good a score as the first one. And the first one I thought was like a beautiful movie, regardless of, you know, the character Arthur, just like the way it was shot and the score and acted, and like the dancing scene in the bathroom after the murders, right? Like that's harrowing stuff. Like, and it was fascinating and intense, but it was also quiet and subtle, you know, like, and this was just, I don't know, over the top in the wrong ways. I don't know. I felt like it could have been something like, maybe if they had more mainstream Frank songs or something like that, it would have been, you know, more popular songs. I felt the songs hit way harder in the trailer than they did throughout the movie. Like that one, "That the world needs now is love, sweet love," right? Like that hit so hard in the trailer. It got me so excited for this movie. And I don't remember ever hearing that in the movie, maybe one time for like a quick second. And it wasn't hitting as hard as it was in the trailer. You know, like that, "and the world needs now," you know, like it could have been, I don't know, man. Like, cause I've been thinking about it since last night. I'm struggling to know whether I liked it or if I didn't like it. And I think I need to see it 1 or 2 more times, maybe at home. But I think the first one's just so much better. But it's a good movie, you know? It's not like it's bad, but like I can tell like this one's going to be divisive. People are either going to love this or hate this. Here's another poster for 4DX with Arthur like crying, and you can see a Hotel Arkham and they're dancing in his head, right? Like the dance music sequences. Like all of that probably would have made a great stage play, but making people sit in the theater for that, you know, there's going to be many people that might even walk out because they're bored. You know, like at one point I was like, Jesus Christ, I have to pee. I don't know when to go. And then a musical part started and I was like, okay, and I ran to pee. I came back and the musical sequence was still going. So you're like, I didn't even miss anything. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. But, you know, Lady Gaga, Joaquin Phoenix, you know, the blood, the makeup. He does look great with the green hair and the makeup once that's like there. In those performances, like there was a couple of the musical performances, because I'm not like a musical hater. Like I watch White Christmas every year. You know, like I'm a fan of musicals in movies. But, you know, they have to be done well, or, you know, the good story. And I'm a sucker for a love story. So like I was there for the Joker Lee, because she's not even Harley Quinn, she's Lee. You know, I was there for the Joker Lee romance, but, you know, it just didn't happen, you know, all that much the way I wanted it to. You know, like I don't know, at one point she's like, oh, you're not the Joker anymore, and then like leaves him, and then like the way the movie ends, right, so spoilers, he gets stabbed to death by a Joker fanatic, and, you know, someone that's so upset that he doesn't want to be Joker anymore type of thing, and stabs him to death, and Arthur Fleck dies there right in the Arkham hospital. And then the guy in the background slices a smile into his face and just sits there laughing in the background holding his sliced up face. So it was fascinating to me in that sense. Todd Phillips definitely didn't want Joaquin Phoenix coming back for this role and didn't want to do another movie, so they ended it, just ending it. And that other guy that killed him, in my mind, I'm like, oh, is that like the origin of maybe a Heath Ledger's Joker, and how someone like ends up with those scars, and then that person ends up being the Joker that fights the Batman? Because clearly this one didn't fight the Batman. This one's not even necessarily set in Gotham, right? Like, it's set in Arkham Asylum and shit, but they say at one point it's Joker versus the state of New York. Maybe Gotham's not a state, and maybe Gotham itself is in New York, so maybe that makes sense. But, like, you know, I didn't hear Gotham mentioned once, you know? Like, I don't know. It's complicated, this movie. It's really something. But, you know, that ending, I was like, all right, maybe that guy's a Joker. But then it just kind of ends. So I was like, did the director, like, want to do something with these characters but didn't quite know what to do? I think it would have been a lot more fascinating if, like the first movie, the Joker was an unreliable narrator and you didn't have this sense of, did this really happen or was this all happening in his head? You know? And then the second movie, there was like little parts of that. Like at the very beginning, he's singing and then they cut back and it's like, Arthur, what do you think? And he's just been standing there. So you're like, oh, okay. So all that singing that he was just doing is what he wants to do on the inside, but he's not actually doing. You know, I wish there was a little bit more of that. Like, if this movie ended, instead of him dying, it ended with the Joker tied up in a cell and he's looking across the hall, and across the hall Harley Quinn's tied up in a cell, right? Like, so the whole thing could have been an imagination in their heads. Like, I think that would have been a more interesting story. Like, or even if they, you know, teamed up and had a prison break, or they were, you know, I feel like he was murdering people in the first movie because that's what the character of the Joker does when people laugh, like, much like the Penguin show. If someone laughs at him, he fucking killed them. You know, like, that's something a villain does. And the Joker's a dark fucking villain. So I felt like the Joker himself, maybe if he is a different person from Arthur, still would have been murdering more people, would have had a plan when there seemed to be no plan. You know what I mean? Like, I'm thinking maybe like a prison break and then them robbing stores and going on the run as like a Bonnie and Clyde type of thing. Could have been a more interesting story, but that's not the route they went. I would be fascinated to hear what your thoughts are down below. Liked it or hated it, let me know down in the comment section below, or message me on my other social medias, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Letterboxd, if you want to check out my other movie reviews. All those links down in the description below. Overall, I gave this movie 3 out of 5 stars. It's kind of right in the middle of the road for me, about a 6 out of 10. 3 out of 5 stars though. I kind of want to give it 3.5 because the more I think about it, there are parts I really do like, but there's also parts I really don't. So, you know, maybe it's a 2.5, maybe it's a 3.5, but right now, currently, before I ever see it again, it is a 3 out of 5 stars, about a 6 out of 10. You could tell I'm conflicted in this review. You know, it's a longer review. I'm talking more than I normally do. I'm going back and forth. You know, I offered some things I thought might have been a better movie, but hey, I'm a moron. I don't know how to make a movie. I'm just a guy that's a consumer of these things. I love movies. I love the DC universe. I love the character of the Joker, Harley Quinn. You know, I love movies in general. So I'm here for any movie if it's interesting. And there was some interesting parts in this, but I felt it was so close to going a different direction and it would have been so cool. And then the route they went just kind of made me feel like they were making me sit through a Broadway play, and they weren't advertising it as that, and they definitely should, you know? Like, and like I said, this probably would win Tony Awards if it was on the stage, but I'm curious to see what the audience score will be on Rotten Tomatoes. But thank you guys so much for watching. Like I said, comment below your thoughts on this or send them to me on my other social medias. If you want to support the channel further, smash that like button, subscribe if you're new, hit that bell so you don't miss future videos, and I will see you beautiful people in the next one. Peace.